Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik, Voss, and in Ahsoka Episode 5, was Anakin Skywalker Ahsoka's own subconscious memory of her mentor in her mind? Or the ghostly trace of Darth Vader, the good and the bad of Vader, reconnecting with Ahsoka from outside of her mind, from the world between worlds? I believe that the world between worlds was real in this episode, but really how much of Darth Vader in this episode was Ahsoka's impression of him, and how much of him came from real, force-fueled history beyond what Ahsoka has control over? Because coming out of this episode, we still don't really know what he was. I guess it really just comes down to the question of, did Hayden Christiansen play the memory of Anakin Skywalker or the ghost of Darth Vader? And I know you could say ghosts are kind of memories in a metaphysical sense, but I think coming out of this episode, we need to know if Anakin was kind of a dream or something that took place outside of Ahsoka's mind. To be clear, I think both are going on. In my breakdown of the episode, I made the case for how Anakin is mostly Ahsoka's subjective memory of him, at times playing the role of a shadow warrior, wearing a performative mask of evil Anakin and Vader in order to teach Ahsoka the lesson that she doesn't come from a cursed legacy of failed mentors, but really just mentorships that were incomplete as the mentors died or fell to the dark side before they could teach their apprentice when to pull their punches. But there were also specific moments in which I believe the actual independent ghost of Darth Vader creeps in from the outside, hijacks a scenario, a spirit from beyond, posing a very real physical threat to Ahsoka in this cosmic space. So it's not just Ahsoka's own mind, it's mostly Ahsoka's own mind, but a mind that occasionally opens itself back up to the demon of Vader, and that demon is reaching in to grab the wheel. Much of what Ahsoka experiences with Anakin in episode 5 does seem to be her mind's eye of her old master. He definitely is a projection from her memory, from the time of right before the events of Revenge of the Sith. That's why he's surprised to see her older at first, and why when she recalls the Siege of Mandalore from Clone Wars Season 7, the events that Anakin wasn't present for because they were concurrent with the rest of the events of Revenge of the Sith, this memory of Anakin does not recognize the battle.
I don't know this battle.
This was the Siege of Mandalore. We had parted ways by now.
But there is one specific line that everyone keeps focusing on.
I won't fight you.
I've heard that before.
What is Anakin referring to with this line, if not what Luke tells Vader in Return of the Jedi?
I will not fight you, Father.
So Ahsoka is set 5 or 6 years after the events of Return of the Jedi, but if this Anakin here is Ahsoka's impressionistic memory of Anakin from before the events of Revenge of the Sith, someone who didn't recognize the Siege of Mandalore because he was not there for it, then how could he know what lay before him in his future conflict with his son during the Battle of Endor? Does this projection of Anakin even know that he has a son or a daughter? But while we mention it, Ahsoka would not know about that exchange in Return of the Jedi. She obviously wasn't there for it either. One possible explanation is that Luke Skywalker, sometime after the events of Return of the Jedi, might have told Ahsoka about that moment, and then she buried it in her subconscious for Anakin here to bring it up. We know that Luke and Ahsoka knew each other, at least from the Book of Boba Fett, chapter 6.
You've taught him well.
It's more like he's remembering than I'm actually teaching him anything.
Sometimes the student guides the master.
This moment in the Book of Boba Fett was not the first time they met, and it was implied that at some point they talked about Anakin.
Sometimes I wonder if his heart is in it.
So much like your father.
What should I do about him?
Trust your instincts.
So Ahsoka might know from Luke, but this exchange with Anakin, I've heard that before. It's just so textually specific that I just don't know if Luke would have given Ahsoka a word-for-word transcript of what went down, and I just think it's kind of a reach that Ahsoka might remember it well enough for Anakin to draw it back up for this moment. So yeah, I probably overthought this too much. I think we all agree here that this line must have come from beyond Ahsoka's understanding. And of course, we are in the world between worlds. It is a cosmic dimension in which all points in time and space are linked by the Force, described as a conduit between life and death. When Ezra Bridger walked through it, he heard all kinds of phrases echoing through time from sources he would have had no idea about. Some sources hadn't even been born yet, like Rey, Kylo Ren, Poe Dameron. So this must mean that Anakin in this space is, at least in part, for some specific moments, being hijacked by the actual spirit of Anakin or Vader that is tethered to this dimension by the Force. Despite Vader's actions throughout his life, this link persists, and it's why Anakin was still able to come back as a Force ghost at the end of Return of the Jedi, and George Lucas made it very clear that he wants us to see him as Hayden Christiansen. While Dave Filoni and other animators have clarified that the world between world is a subjective experience unique to the Jedi who visits it in that particular moment, it's also about their connection to a wider cosmos that they do not understand all of yet. Everybody is connected to this by the Force. This video was sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. Imagine if you could transform your world just by snapping your fingers, like See? Now I'm an intergalactic being of light. And now with Raid's new mythical champions, you can use a special mechanic called Metamorph to switch between two different forms. Champions emerge from their metamorphosis with a new form, new skills, and a new look. Mythical champions are basically two champions in one, and you can switch between both forms as you play, making them the most versatile champions in Raid. Both forms use the same artifacts, accessories, masteries, and blessing, and can be summoned using brand new red primal shards. Mythical champions are a great reason to download Raid if you haven't already. New players can get a Stag Knight with a custom JonTron skin just by using the promo code JTSkin before October 7th. New and returning players who log on 7 different days between now and October 23rd can get Sun Wukong, a legendary champion, for free. And if you use the link in the description or scan the QR code, you'll get insane bonuses like an epic champion Drake, plus energy refills, a skill tome, and an XP booster. So click the link in the description to start playing Raid today. And so this projection of Anakin is really a fusion of what Ahsoka has brought to the table with her subconscious and the ghosts of the past and of the future that are already waiting for her there. This cannot all be in Ahsoka's head, of course, because Jacen Syndulla and even Hera, through her son, are able to hear Ahsoka and Anakin's lightsaber clashes. They don't know where Ahsoka is at that moment, so they're not just like reading her mind and what she's experiencing in that moment. They are hearing the realm itself. Jacen hears it in the water. Now, with a title like Shadow Warrior, I think it's really important to brush up on our Akira Kurosawa to best understand this episode. Shadow Warrior comes from Kurosawa's 1980 film Kagemusha, about a political decoy, and I posed in the breakdown that when Anakin turns into Vader, it's kind of Anakin wearing a veil of Vader as a decoy to give Ahsoka a way to complete her incomplete duel with Vader on Malachor. George Lucas loved Kurosawa, and he based the original Star Wars on Kurosawa's 1958 The Hidden Fortress, among many other influences. But really, one of Kurosawa's most important films, especially for this episode of Ahsoka, is 1950's Rashomon, a story about contradicting memories of a single event and how memory itself is really biased and subjective.
That's not how I remember it.
Things happen in Ahsoka's memories of Ryloth and the Siege of Mandalore that probably did not actually happen according to the historical record. On Ryloth, she witnesses Anakin flash into Darth Vader. If that actually happened, if young Ahsoka actually saw that on Ryloth during Clone Wars Season 1, their relationship would have gone differently. Like, it wasn't until the Mortis arc in Season 3 that Ahsoka began worrying about what would become of her master in the future. So really what young Ahsoka was seeing in this moment was just adult Ahsoka thinking back on this moment, and the world between worlds toying with her with what the future would bring. Because there is something important about this shot that connects with pretty much every other one of the evil Anakin flashes in this episode. He faces away from Ahsoka, like we do not get a good look of his face. He's surrounded by fog. He's partially obscured. Both times he introduces the live or die lesson, his back is turned to Ahsoka on the word live, and he faces her on die.
What's the lesson, Master?
Live or die. Back to the beginning. I gave you a choice. Live or die.
On Ryloth, when he counsels child warrior Ahsoka, he says this pretty dark line.
What if I want to stop fighting?
Then you'll die.
And he steps away and turns as he says the word die. Initially on the Siege of Mandalore, we get the slow approach to Ahsoka's back. Her back is turned to Anakin in this moment. Of course, we have his march into the fog on Ryloth when he flickers into Vader. And actually, you could link this moment with Anakin reappearing through the fog back into the world between worlds. He flickers into Vader, and right here, Ahsoka doesn't really see a close-up of his face. It's not until he says,
You lack conviction.
and his voice is now a mix of Anakin and Vader, human and robotically filtered, reminding us of Matt Lanter's voice mixed with James Earl Jones's voice in that duel on Malachor in Rebels. Honestly, you lack conviction isn't really the meanest or most evil thing Anakin could say right here. It's still the words of a master trying to help his student. And when they are close in combat, it does seem kind of evil when Anakin says,
Time to die.
he's got those fiery red eyes, yeah, but I think this is Anakin the master playing the part to make a point to Ahsoka in his live or die lesson. He's warning her right now that if you let this rage take over you, you're gonna be on a path that leads to death. So when she corners him the way he cornered Dooku, she makes a different choice, and she proves that she has learned the lesson and that there is hope for her yet. So I think really the best way to see what happened in this episode is the world between worlds was totally real here. The Force used Ahsoka's aquatic surroundings to build this construct, but now it has a bluer, more fluid texture because it is made up of the pieces of water that it melts back down to when she leaves it. Ahsoka populated this temporary construct with her own subconscious memories, but those memories got occasionally occasional boosts from the Force to be more effective, using costumes and masks and props, and yes, even script lines to produce this theatrical performance, all supplied from the Force from all points in history to teach the lesson to Ahsoka that she needed to learn. Please support new Rockstars by grabbing this Ahsoka-inspired Fulcrum shirt at nerdriot.shop. Subscribe to all 3 channels of the New Rockstars Network. You can follow me at EA Voss, follow New Rockstars. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.